Philip Cooper. And my topic is on comprehensive cultural sensitivity training. I think that there needs to be such a mandatory training for all faculty and staff with a focus on LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender concerns or issues or persons. Those who don't want this or don't think they need it are the ones that need it the most. We are in a period of culture shift. Culture shift requires proactive measures to move things along in a positive direction. When I was in the service in the 60s and 70s, we called it, this type of training, race relations. And I was adamant that I did not need that. As I've aged, I have learned that because of my position of privilege, I cannot possibly understand the issues in the life space of marginalized groups. That's what I'm talking about. Without this training, without this education, people become perpetuators of the status quo, which is a period of cultural shift with sides, with issues, with position, with all kinds of negativity. We need to move it in the direction it needs to go. Thank you very much.
Next is Rebecca Smith.
I just graduated from Jackson Creek and I'm heading to South in the fall. And I would say that I had an alright middle school experience. There are definitely some good times, but there are also some not so good times, which of course I wish hadn't been the case. A huge part of this was that it was extremely hard for me to feel included in my everyday classes. Because of my sexual orientation, I felt like an outsider. There were a few negative comments from my peers, but what hurt the most was feeling ignored. Discussions in classes were always pretty heteronormative and cisnormative, and generally accidentally exclusive of anyone who identifies outside the norms our society has created. It obviously wasn't intentional, but it still hurt. I would try to speak up, perhaps try to educate my peers and teachers when they made hurtful comments, but because this happened so often, after a few times, people tended to tune me out, which was incredibly frustrating. They would pass it off as, oh, there goes Becca, ranting about some irrelevant social justice issue again. And so this cycle of uninformed hurt kept on. If it had stopped, or if it hadn't have even been an issue in the first place, I'm positive that my experience in your schools would have been much better. My involvement in school clubs, activities, and sports decreased quite a bit from 7th to 8th grade because I felt extremely discouraged and disappointed with my peers and teachers, and their unintentional ignorance on issues that very deeply affect me. That's why I'm here, and that's why mandatory LGBTQ cultural competency training for youth-serving professionals is so important to me. It would be a very minor change that could positively affect so many of your students, and I hope you will take it under serious consideration. Thank you for your time.
Amy Makis? What is it?
McKees.
Sorry.
Yes. I'll be super short because the kids' stuff speaks for itself. I want to speak, though, to the reaction that I generally get when talking about this and that I've had when talking to administration about the importance of cultural competency training. And that is an eye roll and the answer, we live in the real world. And I want to tell you that these kids live in the real world, too. And it's your job to make it safer and better for them.
Spencer Byrie.
Hello, my name is Spencer Byrie. I'm a student at Bloomington High School South. I'm going to be a senior, and I'm a senior leader at my GSA. And so a few students approached me asking for my help in getting a gender-neutral bathroom at South. Sorry. Okay. And when I went to administration, I was told that it would turn into a sex and smoking lounge and that it wasn't worth the risk. And I just feel that that's very offensive because there are people at my school who go each day wishing to feel comfortable at school and wishing that they didn't have to choose which bathroom to go to and longing for a day when they don't have to choose between male and female. But we tell these kids that we can't because we don't want kids to smoke, even though people who want to smoke at school already do smoke at school. And I just think that it's very hurtful when you hear that kind of thing, when you hear that how you feel doesn't matter. That's all.
I'm Phoenix, and I am a Bloomington resident, and I'm going to talk about homophobia and transphobia in schools. I go to Bloomington Graduation School, and I will be a senior graduating in November. I've been with MCCS schools for all but 4 months of my education. While I've been here, I've reflected on my experiences as a queer student. That's the same sentence. Everything I've done since I was in 7th grade, I've been seen as doing by myself and by everyone around me as doing it as a queer person. In the very beginning of my high school experiences, I had to do projects with personal events in my life. I would use queer themes as my center to try to teach my peers and my teachers around me who were lacking of the knowledge but wanted to learn about queer experiences. I would constantly create the themes to make myself feel like I belonged in the schools. And throughout doing this, I made clear statements of my own identity and attempted to start a GSA that ended up being a big flop because none of my administrators none of them could support it because they had other things going on. And as all these queer themes were surrounding my work, I ran into an administrator who definitely was not so supportive of my identity. Every time I would run into a problem that did not have to do with me being queer, he would go out of his way to say that he wasn't a homophobe or that he didn't see me as a different person because I was queer. Towards the end of my attending that school, he found it acceptable to tell my mother that everything I do I make about me being gay and that it wasn't what school is for. Throughout the past year and a half, I've not attended that school anymore, and during this time period, I started to go by he, him, his pronouns, and I use the name Phoenix. The biggest problem now is that I'm misgendered by staff repeatedly, even though I tell them that I go by he, him, his pronouns, and sometimes I have to correct them and tell them that my name is not what they call me. And they think it's acceptable to say, oh, I'll catch on, or that's going to take me a while to get used to, when it's really not that hard to just call somebody by something else, because you may have a kid named Andrew that goes by Andy, and you find it really easy to call them that. So I think that we need a lot of education on these issues, because they can call somebody else and-e instead of, so yeah, it's the same thing. So I think we need a lot of education and training for the administrators. Thank you.
We'll see how well I've learned. Is it Carter Mackus?
Yeah, okay, so I'm Carter McKees, and I am a student at Bloomington South High School, and as do many of my friends, I regularly experience homophobia firsthand. It's not pleasant. It's a constant reminder that your identity is perceived as negative because it differs from the prescribed social norm, that the nature of your being is so undesirable that some would wish it on their enemies. In my experience, homophobia is very othering. To hear your peers and sometimes even friends reinforce the narrative that heterosexuality and cisgender is normal, default, and preferable cultivates an environment in which you are unwelcome and out of place. You are othered. However, worse than this fearful environment is the fact that many of the administrators of my school don't seem to believe it exists. Maybe they choose to ignore it, or are uncomfortable about it, or simply can't distinguish it from a healthy, supportive climate. Therein lies the need for cultural competency training. I don't believe that any teacher or administrator at my school would deliberately make any student feel unwelcome, but I fear many of them have neither the tools nor the motivation to combat homophobia. Were teachers and administrators required to participate in cultural competency training, they would be given the tools and information they didn't even know they needed to help make their school more welcoming to LGBTQ students. Simply having staff who know when and how to intervene when they hear homophobic language could do a world of good. Thank you.
Piper Lacey.
I'm currently a student at Ivy Tech, and as a former student and current friend of those in the Monroe County School District, I feel that it is not only important but essential for there to be cultural competency training. Oh my god, that was a weird noise, I'm sorry. Regarding LGBTQ students, my experience in high school as a trans youth went rather smoothly due to the staff at my private institution of learning being well educated about the unique needs and challenges that LGBTQ students face. However, when I speak to my friends who currently remain in the Monroe County Public Schools system, their experiences show a significant lack of knowledge and acceptance from the staff, making the learning and social environment at school much more difficult than that of their peers. Keeping staff educated and making sure there are systems in place to foster a healthy social and learning environment for LGBTQ youth is vital to the success and mental health of these students. Thank you.
Thank you. That is all the public comment we have cards for. I want to thank each of you for your comments and appreciate you being here with us.
Mr. President, I would just like to say one thing, and I hope I get it out. When I was your ages, I would never have been able to get up and say the kinds of things you just did. I want to tell you how proud I am of you and how proud I hope your parents are of you too. Certainly as a gay adult, I can tell you, as an elected member of this community, it does get better. And I promise to do anything I can to make sure all of you feel welcome and safe, and everyone who follows you will feel the same way too. So once again, thank you for having that courage to help us all understand, because as I think maybe it was Carter who said, I don't think anyone intends to not welcome us. But thank you for reminding us, and especially Mr. Cooper who led off, that we all need to learn how to respond better to each other. So thanks again, and I'm sorry.